So, this video aims to explore the lore, analyse the storyline, and ultimately evaluate the Time Lord Victorious multimedia narrative experiment that was instigated a year ago. Sorry it's taken an age to evaluate this book, but I'll address that at the end of the video. Let's dive in with a recap of part 1, which was months ago, a video and description, though should you require, and although I will refrain from divulging every plot detail, there will be spoilers ahead for All Flesh is Grass, as I need to talk about how this all ends. The 10th Doctor has effectively given in to his Time Lord Victorious impulses and delved back into the dark times of the universe, to an era when even the Immortals were young and before mortality was a thing. During this time, he is accompanied by an Ood assassin called Brian, which is a very morally neutral character bordering on evil, so there is no reliable companion with him to rein in his darker impulses. Instead, we have a character that is exacerbating them, if anything. The story ultimately concluded with 10 identifying the species, the Kotara, that were the first to instigate finite lifespans, and in an effort to halt death from ever being a thing, he tries to destroy them. Just as he turns their algorithm for discerning mortality back on them, the 9th Doctor and 8th arrive. 9 is on a ship of lesser vampires, off the back of his own adventure tie-in, and 8 has allied with the Daleks in a mutual attempt to prevent this grand alteration of time. By this time, the 10th is dressed in full-on Time Lord regalia and calling himself both Doctor, Victorious and the Admiral, at the head of his own resistance against the Kotara. As you'd expect, he has quite a bit of support against the Bringers of Death, so from his perspective and the residents of the Dark Times, the Kotara are pure evil, so destroying them is good. What would they care about the future? A future where everything born is destined to die. So 10 sinks ever further into the belief that he is on the right side. Long story short, the younger Doctors are appalled at how far 10 has gone in attempting to deny death, fueled by denial and indignation, so they try to stop him and save the Kotara. Spanner in the works is that the Daleks decide that the Dark Times are a great place to unleash some alterations of their own, and 8 quickly loses his alliance while the vampire ship is pretty much obliterated too. The Kotara's numbers continue to decline, and the Daleks too turn on the Bringers of Death, basically making this whole ordeal into a right mess. Each Doctor has their own plan for dealing with this mess. 8 and 10 team up against the Daleks, while 9 takes off with the leader of the lesser vampires, Madame Ikala. But they all come to the same conclusion, that the Daleks wish to eliminate the Kotara and usurp their role as the universal Bringers of Death. Soon they uncover Inyit, the last Kotara, who only survived because she withdrew from the others because she doubted their plan. But we do get a good conversation containing a lot of lore pertaining to the Dark Ages, which is what drew me to this series originally. The Kotara aim to bring their order to multiple universes and find beings like the vampires to be aberrations because they are outside of their control over mortality. She goes on to describe how the Kotara simply found the concept of death on Mordila, but Inyit recognised it for what it was, an inevitable and natural force that would propagate throughout the universe on its own when the time was right. Kotara merely thought themselves the appropriate ones to govern this force, and began their long-term grand design simply taking over a process that was always going to have occurred. Not only that, but now they have tied themselves to this force of death. If the Kotara are eradicated in their entirety, then the energies they took from Mordila would explode unchecked across all of creation. Big oops. So all this leads to 10 finally reconsidering his actions and working with his former selves to save the Dark Ages and ensure history unfolds as it should. They more or less succeed, but in a sort of Raiders of the Lost Ark sort of way, where the last Kotara uses up her power to judge the Daleks, forcing them to retreat back to their own time or die out, while some of the lesser vampires then take over the mantle Inyit had been bearing, and instead begin to dedicate themselves to life. Ultimately, the book concludes with the mention that time has now been changed by the Doctor's alterations and the eradication of the Kotara. While it turns out that the force of death was inevitable anyway, without the Kotara's grand design forcing timelines on species, the remainder of the unjudged ones end up stabilising their own mortality over generations. There seems to be a major alteration just to sort of brush under the carpet before moving on with things, as it sort of suggests that lifespans of species may now be completely different post-Time Lord Victorious. Perhaps we even have ones that didn't exist before, or had previously died out. Hey, maybe it will reveal itself that this created an alternate history where it turns out the Doctor was in fact a special timeless immortal that is the messiah for all Gallifreyan kind. I jest, but only in part. The reason it's taken me so long to get around to this book, I think, is the level of interest in this franchise as a whole. I'm not one to focus on the negatives. If I don't like something, I stop talking about it, and while I still enjoy Doctor Who, I've recently found it all rather dull. I actually forgot I'd seen the New Year's special the other day. I saw a clip from it and had no memory of the episode until I looked at it and was like, oh yeah, I did see that. Jack was in it. I thought it was just me for a while, but I looked at other channels to see their coverage of the Time Lord Victorious, and it's all just sort of died out after the initial interest. There are solid videos out there. I'll link a helpful channel, Philip Hawkins, in the description, but what started as a strong idea has just sort of run out of steam. I think the timing, overlong release schedule and cross-media style has damaged more than helped, because it's a rather large investment of time and money into a storyline that ultimately may simply be irrelevant. At least for me, it sort of feels like that, even though the narrative told here, across these mediums, is a good one. It draws on tons of the old school lore from deep Doctor Who canon that I just love and adds to it, but part of me was analysing all this cool stuff and thinking, does it matter? Because it's all in side stories and harkening back to a continuity that recent Who has seemingly discarded. Maybe that's premature of me, the Timeless Child arc is still ongoing, but I can say with full honesty that I enjoyed the Time Lord Victorious narratives more than recent on-screen new Doctor Who. If you want to check all this out for yourself, I'd recommend the two books, The Knight and the Fool and the Dead, followed by All Flesh is Grass, as these are sort of the spine of the narrative, with other side stories tying into them from various platforms. So, thank you for watching this breakdown of the lore presented in Time Lord Victorious, and my review of this whole cross-media experiment. I'll continue to watch Doctor Who because it's always changing and adapting, and I'm here for the ride. Thanks again. I've been Rick, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.